Well, first, before we begin, thanks for having me. I appreciate the fact that you've watched the videos and that you've thought about some of these issues that I think are incredibly important to have an examined life, and specifically the video that you spoke about. And thank you also for making your community more rational and more reasonable. I think that in terms of timeliness, this project is long overdue. We should have had this project millennia ago, and we wouldn't be in the freaking mess we're in right now.
So if you're a younger person with less life experience, perhaps, than the person you're conversing with, how is it that you can advise that you can give the muster and the confidence to get into these kinds of conversations?
Yeah, that's a great question. These are all great questions. That's a great question. So I think the most important thing is, don't ever let anybody make you feel less when you say, I don't know. And so oftentimes the people who pretend to know things the most are the people who try to use ridicule or guilt to make you say, to feel bad when you acknowledge that you don't know something. And so I think the first answer to your question is, we need to shift. When you're engaging somebody, it's totally okay to say, I don't know. In fact, not only is it okay, it's a virtue. You ought to say, I don't know, if you don't know. The thing is, really listen to what people have to say, you know? And when you listen and ask questions, they always come back to that root question, well, you know, how do you know that? How is it that you know that Muhammad flew to heaven on a winged horse? And I'd really like to know that, because if you know something I don't know, I'd like to know it as well. And as long as you stick to faith, to how people know things, and going back to the core, these engagements will be more honest and more genuine. But again, don't let people make you feel bad when you say, I don't know. I say I don't know all the time. I say I don't know when I actually don't know.
Yeah, the conversation is not about knowledge, right? You can be as innocent of knowledge. It's how you come to knowledge.
Yeah, and remember, these people have been indoctrinated into communities of pretending for so long that when someone says, I don't know, it's rather shocking to them. When you engage people who have been pretending to know things that they do not know for a long, long time, and they hang out with other people who pretend to things they don't know, once they meet someone who actually doesn't pretend to know something they don't know, it can be shocking to them. It's a life jolt. So even the fact that you engage these conversations and someone asks you a question and you say, I don't know, that's a really good modeling strategy to help them to stop pretending to know things that they're just pretending.
Sure. This is a question for Rob. If someone responds to you that they really just, they don't value reason as much as they value faith. Faith is the only important thing to them. Is there any counter to that?
Sure, there is. That's a variation of Sam Harris's question when someone says, if someone doesn't value reason and evidence, what reason and evidence can give them that would help them value reason and evidence? And the problem is that we need to terminate the connection between having faith and thinking you're a good person. And so there are these, faith is wedded to this idea that it's good to have it, and if you don't have it, it's a problem. And so part of that initial discussion should center, well, do you think it's important to have faith? Oh, I absolutely think it's important to have faith. Well, why do you think it's important to have faith? Well, then they'll tell you they'll probably say the benefits argument, try to bring them back to the truth. But then you'd say something, it depends on the context and relationship. You can say something like, we're talking about really substantive things here. What happens to you after you die? What's the life you should live? How you should treat other people? What's the type of communities you need to instruct? What about all these other people? And this is a variation of John, a friend of mine, wrote a book, The Outsider Test for Faith, John Loftus. It's a variation of that question. Well, what about these people? In other words, you try to help people shift their understanding so they not entrenched in their own faith, but they see it from the perspective of another faith. So, for example, you could say something like, well, again, these are substantive issues. How do you know that the faith you've chosen is the right faith? and you really genuinely listen to the answer. And you just, and again, in the book there are certain techniques that you could ask, but here are a few techniques. One is the defeasibility test by Matt McCormick. Well, what evidence or what can I provide you with that would help you think your belief is an error? Or don't say that belief is an error. Or for example, if you're talking to a Christian, well, what evidence could you provide a Buddhist with, or a Jain with, or a Muslim with, that would help them to see that their belief is an error? So again, it's attacking those, or looking at those root beliefs that people have for why they hold their faith in the first place. Very, very quickly, so almost never when you talk to someone, once in a great while, and I do this literally every day, 25 years, I don't know, 10, 15 times a day. When you do this, you're not, ideally you want to help people embrace a life of reason and lose their faith. But there are models, there are stages that you bring people through. The first stage, and you watch that talk, is to engender a kind of openness. Well, geez, how could that belief be wrong? Or, geez, what if I might be wrong? A lot of people in those early stages of faith, it's kind of like people who are recovering from drugs and alcohol. They become fundamentalists about things. So you want to move them down this continuum from a certain, it's called a trans-theoretical model. You want to move them from a certain belief stage to another belief stage to another belief stage. Your goal, ideally, very few people are just going to say, wow, you know, I thought this for years, it turned out to be bullshit, I guess I now, after a 5-minute conversation, I can move on. That's not going to happen. But what will happen is that people will come to the realization slowly over time that, and you could be the catalyst for this as well, that the things that they thought were true weren't. I just want to say one thing, I apologize for the long-winded answer. Sometimes you'll have these interactions or conversations and someone will get mad at you. Or it will seem that someone's become more entrenched in their delusions. Oftentimes, that's a process that one has to go through before they shed these pathological beliefs. So don't think, oh no, I've made their life worse, or now they're even more delusional. That's just a process that people go through. Many people think that if they believe something, then they know it. So they use the words belief and knowledge as synonyms. That's not the case. Many people use the word faith. When a religious person uses the word faith, they're making a claim to know. When I gave my May 6th talk for the Humanists of Greater Portland, I gave the example of Jesus Christ walked on water. Okay. Well, how do you know Jesus Christ walked on water? A faith claim is a knowledge claim. Once that is really the essence of a lot of these interventions. Once you understand that, the roadmap is pretty clear. So it's not that I have faith that there'll be an internet connection, or I have faith that my wife is not, sleeping with the football team right now, or I have faith that when I get on a plane, it's not going to crash. I have empirical evidence for those things, and every time you use the word faith in a context that's not the way that religious people use the word faith, you give them cover. You give them cover, or it's a broad word that people use that you need to call people out. Well, what do you mean by that? Well, how do you? I'm serious when I ask people, I'm sincere. Well, what really do you mean by that? What do you mean? What does it mean to you when you have faith? And oftentimes it's like have faith in science, or you have faith in X. And we need to really tease out these things, because I don't have faith in science, and I gave the example why, because I'm completely willing to disregard, to jettison the scientific method if something better comes along. Are you willing to jettison the notion that Jesus Christ is the Son of God? If they say no, then it's not faith.
Someone has noticed that your approach shares a lot in common with some sales win-win kind of strategies. Wonders whether you have a sales background.
Wow. No, I don't. I didn't read almost any literature on sales for this. What I did was I looked at the literature on relationship evangelizing. So here's what I'm interested in. I look at peer-reviewed literature first on how to change the beliefs of people who do not want their beliefs changed. Because when I went to I taught in the prisons, my dissertation is about the prisons, and I published about how do we change the cognitions of prison inmates to help them desist from crime. And the peer-reviewed literature on this stuff is clear. There's motivational interviewing, there's the literature on exiting cults, how do people get out of cults and stay out of cults. And so once I felt, 15 years of studying this, that I had a pretty good understanding of how to change the behavior of people who don't want their behavior changed, then I looked at the Christian literature. In the Christian literature, we don't have to reduplicate, we don't have to reinvent the wheel. The Christians have already done this for us. So I looked at this literature called relationship evangelizing. And I read so many books, I think I lost about 50 IQ points. But the idea behind this, what they have is that they've already done the work for you. So I just re-engineered this, I reverse engineered this, taking some of these techniques and then matching those with the peer-reviewed literature that helps people who are stuck or trapped in ways of beliefs who don't want to do this. It had nothing to do with sales. Nothing. If it did, I wouldn't be working for a paltry amount that I make now. It has everything to do with what works in the literature. And that's what this isn't based in make-believe land. This is based on what actually works.
Absolutely. So, what about some of your detractors from the post-oneness and the left? Have no kind of view of objective truth. How are those kinds of conversations going for you right now?
That's a great question. I'm trying to limit the number of these I have. It's a little difficult. I have a lot of pushback, obviously, from religious people who are not happy, which is interesting when you really think about it, because Mormons go on missions and they proselytize and no one upset with them. Catholics have the catechism and all this indoctrination, no one's upset with them. But then I write a book that attempts to give people an education. I don't look at it as an evangelizing book, but an educational book, and everybody goes berserk. So so the targets are faith on one side, but the biggest, and I don't know if this will be common sense to the folks over there, I don't know if this will be offensive. If it is, it's too bad. But it's the left. There's absolutely no question about it that the left are faith accommodations. And so here's part of the problem. So yes, you do have the postmodernists, but you find there's people in academia, and you have the relativists, and I have a 30-minute, in the book I have a 30-minute guide of how to take anybody out of relativism. Relativism is the idea that one belief or one way of knowing the world is just as good as any other. 30 minutes, almost guaranteed to take someone out of that belief. So, but the left has caused a tremendous amount of problems. Here's the basic idea. People on the left have equated, they've confused dignity. Dignity is a property of people, it is not a property of ideas. And the left has extended this to say, well, just as people of different races can get along, so can people of different faith traditions, so can people of different insert thing of your choice, height or weight or size. And so they've extended the umbrella of tolerance from people to ideas. And that's been dangerous. And some people who criticize my talks or who want to silence me are actually not religious people. Religious people, for the most part, want to save my soul. It's the left who want to silence me. We are all in this together, and I can't do this alone. I'm just one. I can only hope. I mean, even on my best week, I only liberate 4 or 5 people from their faith. I mean, that's my. I'm just one guy, and the idea is to take these models to give people the tools so that you can go out and help people, educate people, and help them become more rational and more reasonable. And I need people to help with that. I'm just one guy.
Well, you've got some friends here, Peter, who are very much looking forward to doing our best to see what we can do to help you on that.
Thank you. I appreciate that, and I genuinely appreciate everything that you're doing and having me here today. And for the earlier question, when people said, well, I don't know, I'm younger. Look, listen, think, be direct with people. Be sincere. Every question you ask someone should be sincere. Speak from your heart. If you don't know, say, I don't know. Really understand why people believe what they believe. Once you do this, you can have a more honest and more genuine relationship, not only with those people, but even with the way you think about ideas. So these interventions, these conversations, they should begin in sincerity. You should be sincere about them the whole time. And once you have that, then not only will that help other people, but we'll be more, we won't be able to solve our problems unless we're honest about them. And so many people are just not honest about their problems. We're not honest about religious fundamentalism. Look, I don't care. Even the very idea that the United States foreign policy is solely responsible for 100%, or there is no other explanation but U.S. foreign policy, that's just dishonest. That religious books have nothing to do with it. I mean, come on. That itself is a fundamentalist interpretation of Scripture. Even after we have the suicide bombs that give explicit religious reasons for these things. But the point is, we need to be honest with ourselves. We need to be honest about the problem. We need to be sincere when we meet to other people. Don't speak in obfuscated language. Be clear, be direct, be sincere, and you will find people will respect you more and not less if you do that.
Got it, Peter. Fantastic. We really want to thank you for speaking to us tonight. I'm going to show you the room now so people give their appreciation. Thanks very much, Peter. And good night.
Have a great night.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you, guys.